My name is Harper, and I've been working at Blackstone Capital for 3 years now. 3 years of fetching coffee, scheduling meetings, and watching my ideas get dismissed with a wave of the hand. The glass towers of downtown Seattle gleamed in the morning sun as I walked through the revolving doors, my heels clicking against the marble floor of the lobby. Another day, another chance to prove myself in a world that seemed determined to keep me invisible. The elevator hummed softly as I rode up to the 32nd floor, clutching my laptop bag and the stack of documents I'd been working on all weekend. The proposal inside that bag wasn't just another assignment. It was my shot at showing everyone what I was really capable of. But as the doors opened, and I stepped into the familiar chaos of the investment firm, I wondered if anyone would even bother to listen. "Harper, thank God you're here," called out Jessica, one of the junior analysts, rushing toward me with a panicked expression. "Mr. Caldwell is looking for the Henderson file, and I can't find it anywhere." I smiled and pulled the file from my bag. "Right here." I took it home to make sure all the financial projections were accurate. There were some discrepancies in the third quarter numbers. Jessica's eyes widened. "You caught errors?" But the whole team reviewed that file. Sometimes fresh eyes help," I said, handing her the corrected documents. I also took the liberty of creating a supplementary analysis showing potential growth scenarios based on market trends. Before Jessica could respond, the booming voice of Richard Caldwell echoed across the floor. "Where's my coffee? And someone tell me why the Peterson account is still pending." I sighed and made my way to the coffee station, a routine I'd perfected over the years. Medium roast, 2 sugars, a splash of cream. As I prepared his coffee, I overheard a conversation from the conference room that made my blood run cold. "The Meridian Group wants to see our best proposal by Friday," said Tom Bradley, one of the senior partners. "This could be the biggest deal we've ever landed. We're talking about a $50 million investment." "Who's handling the presentation?" asked another voice. "I'm thinking Peterson should take lead on this one," Caldwell replied. "Maybe bring in Williams for the financial analysis." I felt my heart sink. The Meridian Group. I'd been researching them for months, studying their investment patterns, their corporate culture, their previous partnerships. I knew everything about them. But once again, I was being overlooked. Taking a deep breath, I knocked on the conference room door. "Your coffee, Mr. Caldwell." He barely looked up from his papers. "Just leave it on the table, Harper. We're in the middle of something important." "Actually, sir, I couldn't help but overhear about the Meridian Group. I've been following their investment strategy for quite some time, and I have some insights that might be valuable." Tom Bradley chuckled. "Harper, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but this is a bit beyond your scope. Why don't you focus on getting those expense reports organized?" The dismissal stung, but I wasn't ready to give up. "I understand, but I've actually prepared a comprehensive analysis of their portfolio preferences. They tend to favor sustainable technology investments with strong ESG ratings, and I've identified several opportunities that align perfectly with their criteria." Caldwell finally looked up, his expression a mixture of surprise and mild irritation. "Harper, you're just the assistant. Leave the strategic thinking to the professionals." Those words hit me like a physical blow. Just the assistant. As if 3 years of observing, learning, and quietly contributing meant nothing. As if my business degree and my passion for this industry were irrelevant because I happened to answer phones and schedule meetings. "Of course, sir," I managed to say, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "I'll get those expense reports ready." As I left the conference room, I could feel the weight of their dismissal settling on my shoulders. But instead of crushing me, it lit a fire in my belly. I walked back to my desk, pulled out my laptop, and opened the document I'd been working on all weekend. If they wouldn't listen to my ideas in person, maybe they'd pay attention when those ideas spoke for themselves. The rest of the day blurred together in a haze of routine tasks and stolen moments of research. I fielded calls, arranged meetings, and organized files, all while my mind raced with possibilities. Every time I looked toward the conference room, I saw the team huddled together, brainstorming ideas that I knew weren't quite hitting the mark. During my lunch break, I walked to the nearby park, the cool Seattle air helping to clear my head. The city bustled around me, full of ambitious people chasing their dreams. I watched a group of construction workers building a new office tower, their coordination and teamwork impressive. It struck me that even in construction, everyone's role was valued. The person mixing concrete was just as important as the one reading the blueprints. But in my world, hierarchy ruled everything. Your title determined your worth, and my title apparently meant I was invisible. That evening, I stayed late in the office, long after everyone else had gone home. The cleaning crew nodded at me politely as they went about their work, and I found comfort in their quiet presence. Under the soft glow of my desk lamp, I refined my proposal, pouring every ounce of knowledge and passion I'd accumulated over the past 3 years into those pages. The document wasn't just a business proposal, it was a manifesto. A declaration that intelligence and insight couldn't be confined by job titles or corporate hierarchies. I outlined a revolutionary approach to sustainable investing that would appeal to Meridian's values while delivering exceptional returns. I backed every claim with research, supported every recommendation with data, and painted a vision of the future that was both profitable and responsible. As I finally packed up my things around midnight, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to wait for permission to share my ideas. I wasn't going to accept being dismissed as just the assistant. Tomorrow, I would find a way to make my voice heard, even if it meant risking everything I'd worked for. The elevator descended slowly, carrying me away from the glittering towers of ambition and toward whatever came next. But for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I was finally moving in the right direction. The next morning arrived with the kind of drizzle that makes Seattle famous. I stood in front of my apartment window, watching the raindrops race down the glass while I sipped my coffee and gathered my courage. Today was the day I would either change my trajectory or potentially end my career at Blackstone Capital. My phone buzzed with a text from my roommate Sarah. "Good luck today. Remember, fortune favors the bold." She was right. I'd spent years playing it safe. And where had it gotten me? Nowhere but deeper into the shadows of corporate invisibility. I dressed carefully that morning, choosing my best blazer and the heels that made me feel confident. If I was going to make a stand, I wanted to look the part. The commute to the office felt different somehow, as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do. The office buzzed with its usual morning energy when I arrived. I could see the team already gathered in the conference room, coffee cups scattered across the table, whiteboards covered with their preliminary ideas for the Meridian proposal. From my desk, I watched them struggle with concepts I'd already solved, saw them chase leads that would ultimately disappoint. "Harper!" Caldwell's voice cut through the morning chatter. "I need you to reschedule my 3 o'clock. And can you make sure the Peterson file gets to Williams before noon?" "Of course, Mr. Caldwell," I replied, but my mind was elsewhere. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Marcus Chen, a contact I'd made at a networking event 6 months ago. He worked in business development for a consulting firm, and more importantly, he had connections throughout the investment community. During my lunch break, I met Marcus at a small cafe in Pioneer Square. The historic brick buildings and cobblestone streets felt like a world away from the gleaming towers of downtown. "Harper, it's great to see you again," Marcus said, sliding into the booth across from me. "What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath. "I need a favor, Marcus. A big one." His eyebrows raised with interest. "I'm listening. I know someone who knows someone at the Meridian Group. I've developed a proposal that I think could revolutionize their investment approach, but I need a way to get it in front of the right people." Marcus leaned back, studying my face. "This is about more than just a business proposal, isn't it? It's about proving that good ideas can come from anywhere, not just from the corner office." He nodded slowly. "I might be able to help. I know Patricia Williams. She's the director of strategic investments at Meridian. We went to business school together. But Harper, if you're going around your own company, you need to be prepared for the consequences." "I know the risks," I said, though my heart was pounding. "But I also know that sometimes you have to bet on yourself." Marcus pulled out his phone. "Patricia's actually in town this week for a conference. Let me see if I can arrange something." 20 minutes later, I had a meeting scheduled for the following afternoon. Patricia Williams would give me 15 minutes to present my ideas, 15 minutes to prove that the assistant everyone overlooked had something valuable to offer. The rest of the day passed in a blur of nervous energy and last-minute preparations. I refined my presentation, practiced my pitch, and tried to ignore the growing anxiety in my stomach. Every time I looked at the conference room, where the team continued their work on what I knew was an inferior proposal, I felt the weight of what I was about to do. That evening, I called my sister Emma, who lived in Portland. "You're doing what?" she asked, her voice a mixture of admiration and concern. "I'm taking a shot, Em. I'm tired of being invisible. But what if they fire you? Then at least I'll know I tried. I can't keep living in the shadows, watching other people get credit for ideas that aren't as good as mine." Emma was quiet for a moment. "You know what? I'm proud of you. Dad always said you had more fight in you than you showed. Our father had been a small business owner who'd taught us that success came from hard work and taking calculated risks. He'd died when I was in college, but his lessons about perseverance and self-belief had stayed with me." The next day dragged by with excruciating slowness. I went through the motions of my usual tasks, but my mind was focused on the presentation I'd be giving in just a few hours. At 2:30, I told Jessica I had a dentist appointment and slipped out of the office. The Meridian Group's Seattle office occupied the top 3 floors of a building overlooking Elliott Bay. As I rode the elevator to the 40th floor, I felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration. This was it, my moment to step out of the shadows and into the light. Patricia Williams was younger than I'd expected, probably in her early 40s, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of confident bearing that came from years of making tough decisions. Her office overlooked the Sound, and I could see ferries cutting through the gray water below. "Marcus speaks highly of you," she said, gesturing for me to take a seat. "He says you have some interesting ideas about sustainable investing. Thank you for seeing me, Ms. Williams. I know your time is valuable." She smiled. "Please, call me Patricia. And you're right, I can give you exactly 15 minutes. Impress me." I opened my laptop and began my presentation, my voice steady despite the butterflies in my stomach. I walked her through my analysis of Meridian's portfolio, highlighted gaps in their current strategy, and presented a comprehensive plan for expanding their sustainable technology investments. The numbers were solid, the research was thorough, and the vision was clear. Patricia listened intently, occasionally asking questions that showed she was following my logic. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment, studying the charts and graphs on her screen. "This is impressive work, Harper." "Very impressive. The ESG integration you're proposing could position us perfectly for the next wave of regulatory changes." My heart soared. "Thank you. I believe this approach could generate significant returns while also creating positive environmental impact." "I'm curious," she said, leaning forward. "What's your current role at Blackstone?" This was the moment I'd been dreading. I'm an administrative assistant." Patricia's eyebrows shot up. "An assistant? Who supervised this research?" "No one. I did it independently, on my own time." She stared at me for a long moment, then began to laugh. Not mockingly, but with genuine delight. "An assistant just walked into my office and presented one of the most sophisticated investment strategies I've seen in months. This is either the most remarkable coincidence of my career, or Blackstone has no idea what they have in you. I'm hoping it's the latter. Harper, I want to discuss this proposal with my team. Can you be available for a more formal presentation next week?" I nodded, hardly daring to believe what I was hearing. "Absolutely. Good. I'll have my assistant coordinate with you directly, I suppose." She smiled. "This should be interesting." As I left the Meridian building, I felt like I was walking on air. The gray Seattle afternoon seemed brighter, the sounds of the city more vibrant. I had done it. I had stepped out of the shadows and into the spotlight, and I hadn't been crushed. Instead, I'd been invited to dance. But as I walked back toward the Blackstone building, reality began to set in. I still had to face my colleagues, still had to pretend that nothing had changed. The real test was yet to come. The following week brought a tension I'd never experienced before. Every morning, I walked into the office carrying the secret of my meeting with Patricia Williams, watching my colleagues struggle with their Meridian proposal, while knowing I might hold the key to something extraordinary. The team's frustration was becoming increasingly visible. I overheard Tom Bradley on a conference call, his voice strained as he tried to explain their concept to someone on the other end. No, we're taking a more traditional approach to portfolio diversification, he was saying, and I could practically hear the disappointment in the client's response. Meanwhile, Patricia's assistant had called to schedule a formal presentation for Friday afternoon. The Meridian Group wanted to see my proposal presented to their full investment committee, 6 senior executives who would ultimately decide whether to move forward with Blackstone or look elsewhere. I spent every free moment refining my presentation, working late into the night to ensure every detail was perfect. My apartment became a war room, with financial charts taped to the walls and my laptop permanently stationed on the kitchen table. Sarah brought me coffee and sandwiches, watching with a mixture of awe and concern as I threw myself into the work. "You know they might not forgive you for this," she said one evening, finding me hunched over my laptop at 2 a.m. "I know," I replied, not looking up from the screen. "But I'm past the point of caring about forgiveness. I'm fighting for recognition." Thursday morning brought unexpected drama. As I arrived at the office, I could see through the glass walls of the conference room that an intense discussion was taking place. Caldwell was pacing, his face red with frustration, while Tom Bradley sat slumped in his chair, looking defeated. "Harper!" Caldwell's voice boomed across the floor. "Conference room now!" My stomach dropped. Had they found out about my meeting with Patricia? I grabbed my notepad and walked slowly toward the conference room, feeling like I was approaching my own execution. "Sit down," Caldwell said, not looking at me. "We have a problem." I remained standing. "What kind of problem?" "The Meridian Group just called," Tom Bradley said, his voice flat. "They want to schedule a presentation for tomorrow afternoon. They said they've received some additional materials that have shifted their perspective on the opportunity." My heart began to race. They knew. "The thing is," Caldwell continued, "they specifically requested that the presentation include whoever prepared the alternative analysis they received. They wouldn't tell us who that was." I felt the weight of the moment settling on my shoulders. This was it, the moment of truth. I could confess now, explain what I'd done, and hope for understanding. Or I could remain silent and let this play out on its own terms. "Do you have any idea what they might be referring to, Harper?" Caldwell asked, his eyes narrowing. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Looking forward to tomorrow's presentation. Your proposal has generated significant excitement here." I looked up at the faces around the conference table, Caldwell, Bradley, Williams, and Peterson, all staring at me with varying degrees of suspicion and confusion. These were people I'd worked with for 3 years, people who'd never seen me as anything more than a support function. "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I think I might know what they're referring to." The room fell silent. I prepared an analysis of Meridian's investment strategy and submitted it for their consideration. Caldwell's face went from red to purple. "You what?" "I spent months researching their portfolio, studying their investment patterns, and developing a comprehensive proposal for sustainable technology investments." "Without authorization?" Bradley's voice was barely above a whisper. "Without permission," I corrected, "but not without qualification." Peterson leaned forward. "Harper, you're an administrative assistant. You don't have the credentials to—" "I have an MBA from the University of Washington," I interrupted. "I graduated summa cum laude with a concentration in investment strategy. I've spent 3 years in this office absorbing everything I could about this industry, and I've developed insights that apparently resonate with one of the most sophisticated investment groups in the Pacific Northwest." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of traffic from the street below, the rapid beating of my own heart. Finally, Caldwell spoke. "You have an MBA?" "Yes, sir. I've been working here while paying off my student loans and looking for an opportunity to transition into a more strategic role." "And you never mentioned this?" "I mentioned it in my initial interview 3 years ago. I was told the position was entry-level, but that there would be opportunities for advancement." Williams laughed bitterly. 3 years. We've had someone with an MBA answering phones and scheduling meetings for 3 years. The question now, I said, feeling a surge of confidence, is whether you want to turn this into an opportunity or let it become a disaster. Caldwell sat down heavily in his chair. What do you mean? Meridian is expecting a presentation tomorrow. They've already seen my proposal, and they're interested. You can either work with me to present a unified strategy, or you can try to explain to them why the person who developed their preferred approach isn't part of your team. The room erupted in whispered conversations. I could see the wheels turning in their minds, calculating the risks and benefits of different approaches. This was the moment when everything would change, one way or another. Tom Bradley was the first to speak. What exactly did you propose to them? I pulled out my laptop and opened my presentation. A comprehensive ESG integration strategy that would position Meridian at the forefront of sustainable investing while delivering superior returns. For the next hour, I walked them through my analysis, watching their expressions shift from skepticism to surprise to grudging respect. The numbers were undeniable, the strategy was sound, and the opportunity was real. When I finished, Caldwell leaned back in his chair and studied me with new eyes. Harper, I owe you an apology. Several apologies, actually. What matters now is how we move forward, I said. Agreed. Tomorrow's presentation, you'll take the lead. I felt a surge of vindication mixed with terror. Are you sure? It's your proposal. You know it better than anyone. He paused. But Harper, after tomorrow, we're going to have a very serious conversation about your role here. As I left the conference room, I felt like I was walking into a new chapter of my life. The assistant who had been invisible for 3 years was about to step into the spotlight, and there was no going back. That evening, I called my sister Emma to share the news. I can't believe it, she said. You're actually going to present to the investment committee? I'm terrified, I admitted, but also excited. This is what I've been working toward for so long. Dad would be proud, she said softly. He always said you had the courage to bet on yourself when it mattered. As I hung up the phone, I realized she was right. Tomorrow wasn't just about a business presentation. It was about proving that talent and determination could overcome any obstacle, even corporate hierarchies and outdated assumptions about who deserved to be heard. The rain had stopped, and Seattle glittered outside my window like a city of possibilities. Tomorrow, I would find out if I was ready to seize mine. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that follows a storm. I woke up before my alarm, my mind already racing through the final details of my presentation. Today would either validate 3 years of quiet ambition or teach me a harsh lesson about the limits of corporate dreams. I chose my outfit carefully. A charcoal gray suit that commanded respect, paired with the pearl earrings my grandmother had given me for college graduation. If I was going to represent Blackstone Capital in the most important meeting of my career, I wanted to look the part. The office atmosphere was electric with nervous energy. Word had spread quickly about the afternoon's presentation, and I could feel curious glances following me as I moved through the morning routine. Jessica approached my desk with a cup of coffee and a nervous smile. I heard about the presentation, she said quietly. I just want you to know that some of us have always known you were capable of more than this job required. Her words meant more than she could know. Thank you, Jessica. That means a lot. The morning crawled by with agonizing slowness. I went through my final preparations, printed backup copies of all materials, and tried to calm my nerves with deep breathing exercises. At 11:30, Caldwell called the team together for a final strategy session. Harper will present her proposal, he announced to the room. The rest of us will provide support and answer any questions about implementation and company resources. I could see the mix of emotions on my colleagues' faces. Surprise, resentment, curiosity, and in some cases what looked like respect. Tom Bradley, who had seemed most threatened by my emergence, surprised me by approaching after the meeting. I want to apologize, he said quietly. We should have recognized your potential years ago. For what it's worth, I've reviewed your proposal, and it's exceptional work. Thank you, Tom. That means more than you know. At 2 p.m., we made our way to the Meridian Group's offices. The elevator ride felt endless, my heart pounding with each passing floor. When the doors opened onto the 40th floor, I took a deep breath and stepped into my future. Patricia Williams greeted us in the reception area, her smile warm and encouraging. "Harper, I'm excited to see how you present this to the full committee." The boardroom was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, a polished mahogany table that could seat 20, and 6 of the most intimidating executives I'd ever encountered. As I set up my laptop and checked the projection system, I felt the weight of their collective experience and skepticism. "Ladies and gentlemen," Patricia began, "I'd like to introduce the team from Blackstone Capital. Leading today's presentation is Harper Reynolds, who has developed what I believe is a groundbreaking approach to sustainable investing." I stood up, feeling the eyes of the room focus on me. For a moment, I thought about the Harper who had walked into this building 3 years ago, eager and hopeful, but naive about the challenges ahead. That Harper had dreamed of this moment, but she never could have imagined the journey it would take to get here. "Thank you for your time today," I began, my voice clear and confident. "I'm here to present an investment strategy that will position Meridian at the forefront of the next wave of sustainable technology while delivering exceptional returns for your portfolio." I launched into my presentation, and something magical happened. The nervousness melted away, replaced by passion and expertise. This was my material, my research, my vision. I walked them through market analysis, competitive positioning, and financial projections with the confidence of someone who had lived and breathed this data for months. The questions came fast and sharp, but I was ready for them. When the CFO challenged my assumptions about regulatory changes, I provided detailed analysis of pending legislation. When the Director of Technology questioned the scalability of my proposed investments, I showed them case studies from similar implementations in European markets. 45 minutes into what was supposed to be a 30-minute presentation, I could see I had their attention. These weren't polite nods of corporate courtesy. These were engaged professionals recognizing a solid opportunity. "The numbers are compelling," said the chairman, a distinguished man in his 60s who had remained silent through most of the presentation. "But what makes you confident that this approach will outperform traditional portfolio strategies?" I clicked to my final slide, which showed a comprehensive comparison of projected returns. "Because the market is moving toward these investments whether we lead or follow. The question isn't whether sustainable technology will dominate the next decade. It's whether Meridian wants to be a leader in that transition or a follower." The room fell silent as they absorbed the implications. I could see glances being exchanged, the kind of silent communication that happens among people who have worked together for years. Finally, Patricia spoke. "Harper, would you and your team mind stepping out for a few minutes while we discuss this internally?" My legs felt weak as we filed out of the boardroom. In the hallway, Caldwell put a hand on my shoulder. "Whatever happens in there," he said, "you just delivered the best presentation I've seen in 20 years. We waited for what felt like hours, but was probably only 15 minutes. When Patricia emerged, her expression was unreadable. "We'd like to speak with Harper privately for a moment," she said. My heart sank. This was it, the polite rejection, the thanks but no thanks that would send me back to my desk and my old life.